Howdy, some of y'all might know me as an editor for Shayfrillas, and I've made parody videos in the vein of Shayfrillas, well actually Magic Mike, so it makes sense for me to finally do an actual video that's not a parody of Shayfrillas.
So let's get started!
Amphibia is a 2019 Disney cartoon created by Matt Brawley. The show centers around Anne as she tries to find, fight, redeem, and forgive her lost friends Sasha and Marcy after they get sucked into a giant world filled with anthropomorphic amphibians. Anne's party consists of the Planner family, Sprig, her best friend, Polly, a bloodthirsty psychopathic infant, and Hop Hop, the Nino man. Amphibia is honestly one of my favorite modern cartoons, tied with the Owl House. It has a lot of heart and soul put into both the story and production. But honestly, if I'm gonna point out something that I think is a bit weak about the show, and it's not gonna affect how much I love it, it's that the main four are a bit uninteresting when compared to who's around them. Don't get me wrong, the main four are great characters and greatly written characters, but they pale in comparison to all the other colorful characters that surround them. I could talk all day about Sasha, Grime, Marcy, and General Union, Scourge of the Sandmoors, Defeater, Ragnar, Wretched, and the
Get on with it!
But my favorite characters, and hell, even my favorite aspects of the show, come in Wartwood. They present a real interesting slice-of-the-life type vibe to the show, and it's always a joy to see them in the limelight. From former mercenary Mrs. Croker, to quirky wood fetishist Loggle, to witch-in-training Maddie, to Chuck. Nearly all the people in Wartwood are great characters, but there are a couple that really stick out to me. First, there's One-Eyed Wally, the clueless old vagabond who everyone calls crazy but still calls their friend. Then there's Sprig's love interest Ivy Sundew, a real action girl. At last, there's Ivy's mother Felicia, the owner of a tea shop and is definitely not an action girl. Right? Anywho, people like to talk about the big theories that relate to the central story of the show, like, I should probably mention now that there'd be spoilers on the horizon. Skip to the end of the video, like, the very last second to avoid being spoiled. Okay, here we go. Like, what's the big monster thing in the king's basement? What is Marcy's body being used for in the king's basement? Are there more mossmen, like what Wally and Anne discovered in the king's basement? Did this scene happen in the king's basement? Why is the king's basement? Basically, everyone's wondering about the king's basement. But for this video, I'd like to talk about a theory that doesn't really connect to the main plot. One that connects the three characters I mentioned earlier. One that I've talked about ad nauseum on the Amphibia subreddit. It's why One-Eyed Wally is Ivy's dad. But what's the theory without its foundation? Ever since the middle of season 1's run, I've actually been obsessed with the idea of Wally and Felicia interacting. So much so I made them a married couple that locks John Lennon in their basement in one of my YouTube poops, which by the way was marked as a 100 out of 10 anime by an anonymous critic. But why was I so obsessed with Wally and Felicia interacting? They were polar opposites. One's a tea shop owner who hates dirtiness and strives for more perfection than Steely Dan, and the other plays a minstrel's instrument and practically lives in a bar.
Oh, what day is it?
But that's exactly why I was obsessed. The fact that they were polar opposites meant that there were many opportunities and twists to make with a conversation between the two of them. But the fact that they're not main characters, at least not yet, means they only got 5 seconds of interaction and only in one episode.
Am I crazy or is he making sense?
Granted, the two were seen near each other throughout the series, but it still would have been nice to see the Wartwood citizens mingle with people that aren't Anne or the Planters. Fast forward to season 2, where I'm hoping to get some more Wallicia content, and I was surprised by the biggest twist of the show so far. In the episode Swamp and Sensibility, it is revealed that One-Eyed Wally, the homeless raving lunatic, is in fact rich as frick. His real name is not Wallace, but Walliam, and his family has made a fortune making toe floss, and maybe explosives. You see, Wally escaped to Wartwood to feel absolutely no responsibility, and his father was under the pretense that he was working in the area. Swamp and Sensibility is one of my favorite episodes of the series, but maybe only because Wally is my favorite character. And this opened a brand new branch to how we could get Wally/Felicia content. What if Felicia doesn't know Wally's rich, but the moment she does, she'll immediately become a gold digger towards him, and he'll be forced into a marriage with her because he has no free will of his own. Or maybe she does know he's rich, but is keeping it a secret so it can be revealed to the town in late season 2 or season 3. Either way, this is an exciting revelation for all the people who ship Wallicia. All 42 of us. But there's another episode in season 2, another of my favorites, called Ivy on the Run, where Ivy, fed up with Felicia's pretentious home values, runs away from home only to have to beat her mother in a fight. You'd expect Ivy to win, but then Matt Brawley subverts our expectations by revealing that Felicia is an adept fighter, and is also a Time Lord? I don't know. Point is, she actually traveled outside of Wartwood before having Ivy and learned all of those moves and put them all in Ivy's chores to make her a better fighter so she can help collect some more tea outside the valley with her. Stupid? Kinda. Heartwarming? Yes. And if you think it's a coincidence we have 2 episodes about supporting characters living double lives in the same season,
You're wrong!
Also, I forgot to mention this, but we even have Wally in this episode. just because. Oh wait, I almost forgot this one line from the end of the episode that perfectly segues into the next part of my theory.
I still can't believe you used to be some kind of world traveler. Oh, honey, where do you think I met your father? Mom, please!
So it's well established that Wally and Felicia were both outside the valley at one point, Wally being the heir to his father's tofu/explosive company, and Felicia collecting tea in China and learning martial arts. It's not entirely impossible that they met up in Wally's hometown of Ribbonvale and interacted there and maybe did the deed. Wally could have arrived in Wartwood after Ivy was born, with Felicia neglecting to tell him because she knew he wanted to be free of responsibility, and children are a big responsibility. And maybe because Wally had already taken the role of the loon, so it would be a bad publicity for Felicia if word got out her lover and or daughter's father was the town nuthead. If she was keeping this from him, it would explain this line, sort of.
To be honest, I have no idea what's going on.
All of what I said here was speculation about what could be possible, so let me talk about evidence that actually is in the show. Because if I keep ranting about headcanons that aren't backed by actual evidence, then I'll look just as crazy as Wally. Remember that scene I showed from Ivy on the run? Let's re-roll the footage, shall we?
Where do you think I met your father? Mom, please!
See? You see? Oh, you don't see it?
Your father? Mom,
He moved!
please!
Right there! Wait! Right there! Coincidence? I think not!
Now I'm a film kid, but I've always struggled a bit in cinematography, but I know symbolism when I see it. Putting Wally in the center, right after Felicia says the line is no accident. Hell, putting Wally in that episode was no accident. They could have gotten Mrs. Croker or Mayor Toadstool in there, but the crew settled with old Wallers. Anyway, is there anything about Wally and Ivy's appearances that make them look related? At first glance, no. But after a while, you'll notice that both Wally and Ivy have purple mouths. And this is really hard to spot, but also hard to disprove. Wally's open eye color is the same color as Ivy's skin.
Checkmate, liberal.
Now you could say it's just a cheap animation thing, but I stand by what I think. You could also throw in a loophole by saying Felicia Sundu is or was obviously married to an unknown Mr. Sundu. Right then, but Felicia's mother's name is Sylvia Sundu, and I have to assume that Felicia's father is also named Mr. Sundu. So unless we have some inbreeding shit going on here, Felicia is not married to a guy named Sundu. So Wally and Ivy have subtle similar physical features, but similar physical features nonetheless. Do they have any moments together? Well, they're not main characters yet, so we do have some subtle ones. In the season 1 finale reunion, Wally tries to escape the toads but is injured. Ivy, who watches, has the first instinct to throw a plate at one of the toads. Even if Ivy doesn't know Wally is her father, this shows real determination to defend him. Then there's the season 2 episode Return to Wartwood, where Wally leaves Ivy and Sprig in the charge against Giant Rooster Monster, and he says this.
Fight for the eyes, children!
He says it as if Sprig and Ivy are his own children. Or Ivy's his child and Sprig's his son-in-law. Speaking of, I'd really love to see that dynamic one day.
You can make it up to me by finally taking me on a date. Mwah.
On to my last point, the very fact that Wally's in Ivy's episode. Sure, he was there to provide comic relief with the subplot and all, but think about how the plot of Ivy on the Run goes. Child of pompous parent rebels and ends up fighting them and wins and reconciles. Now let's go over to the plot of Swamp and Sensibility. Child of pompous parent rebels and ends up fighting them and wins and reconciles. They're the same. This has to be hinting at something, and not including Wally in this episode would basically make the whole thing pointless. Why have two same stories and have them not build up to anything? Speaking of building up, I do hope they can include more Wallisia/Walla Ivy content in season 3. Bonus points if Sasha and Grime gonna be involved too. They cool. Hopefully they can balance it out over Anne and the Planters in LA and Marcy and... well, maybe she'll just appear in end scenes. But yeah, I'd be sad if there was some build up to this theory only for it to not be realized or for it to be pushed away for a small filler episode or even an epilogue. As great as the main cast is, I do want to see a happy ending for Wally Ribbleton and the Sundews, if my theory is true. Sometimes we do take the supporting characters for granted. They can be just as main characters as the actual main characters to some people. So maybe let's treat and write them like main characters, because they're the main characters of their own story. Sorry for getting philosophical there for a minute. In conclusion, Ivy is Wally and Felicia's daughter, and no one can make me think I'm wrong. Okay, I'm off to hide from the theater kids in my basement, where all the theater kids are hiding. Bye!
Oh yeah!